Welcome back to the Forza Juventus podcast. I'm your host, Enrique Ortega, joined with me.
Oh,
hey guys, it's and Alex Donno from you guys. You can see I cover a lot of college football is my day job, but I'm a lifelong Interista. I also co-host the Calcio Connection podcast. So it's great to be here, even though I'm in enemy territory. You both seem like really nice guys, so I'll let your allegiances slide.
And of course, we have Anthony, as always, with us as well. It's good to be back. We had the first two games. I know Anthony and I talked about right before the season started. I personally went away for a couple of weeks for a work trip, but glad to be back, especially for a game this massive this weekend. But before we get into the whole reason we're all connected today, let's just recap quickly. Thoughts, Anthony, over to you on the first two games. We had the opening game with Juventus Parma winning 2-0 with Jonathan David scoring and Yildiz assisting and Vlahovic scoring and Yildiz getting the other assist. And then we had Juventus Genoa 1-0, Vlahovic with the only goal and Kostic assist. So what are your thoughts those first two games?
Well, I think this is Vlahovic's rightful place. Nice and pissed off coming off the bench. So, and he's in a contract year. So if we can just sign him to 1-year contracts every year and sit him on the bench, I think we'll get some goals out of the guy. Otherwise, we've been taking care of business. It doesn't look super encouraging, but it doesn't look bad. I don't think any of the other teams in Serie A are really that good except for Napoli. So we'll see.
And listen, keeping two clean sheets to start the campaign is never a bad way to start off. And like you said, I noticed Vlahovic is definitely playing with a chip on his shoulder.
Definitely too. Like I couldn't agree more with the whole Vlahovic thing. I think not having a starting role is good for Juventus fans because I think we were all tired of seeing him start and get long minutes. So these 30 minutes he's getting each game is perfect for him. But also too, like you mentioned with the clean sheets, Alex, is that Bremer's back. That's arguably the best defender in Serie A, one of the best defenders in the world, night and day when he's in the back line and not.
Well, they saved 2 goals already, right? So it's not bad. Not a bad start.
And with that as well, I mean, like I mentioned, Yildiz with the 2 assists on the opening day. He won the Serie A Player of the Month, so congrats to him. I think we're all expecting big things from him on the Juventus side. Alex, thoughts on the Wonder Boy that we have on our team?
I mean, I certainly have some thoughts after the 4-4 draw that Inter had at the Meazza with Juve last year. I think it was a 4-2 Inter lead, and then Yildiz just kind of got loose at the end of that game. So certainly he's a player that and last season was one where Inter struggled to win the big games, and that was really one that they should have held on to and won at home, and then the other one they lost to Juve 1-0 away. But Yildiz is a player that made a major impression on me.
Yeah, I think Anthony and I have had a big hopes for him this season, especially with the number 10 on his back. So we'll see what he does with the whole new season, Champions League, all these games coming up with this season. But moving on really quick to the next thing is that we had 2 deadline day signings for Juventus. We saw Edon Zhegrova, one guy that Anthony and I had talked about in the last episode, that when we were rumored with him, we didn't know if it was going to happen or not. And then I think kind of the biggest shock that we had was Loïs Openda, because the whole time we thought Randall Colomwani was coming, and that fell apart on deadline day. Kamoli said, I'm done with PSG. It got a guy in an hour. So we needed somebody up top in the striking position. We got our third guy. On paper, having Jonathan David, Dusan Vlahovic, and Loïs Openda is a blessing. It's something that we have three attacking options that we haven't really had in a while. I mean, Milik is still nowhere to be found. But I think there's promise with our attack this season, especially with Zhegrova coming into the team, adding some creativity and playing with Jonathan David at Lille. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Anthony, why don't we start with you?
Sure. No, I think Zhegrova, like I said in the last cast, I mean, he's the one guy on that whole list that offers us something a little bit different. We don't have any sort of creative source in our team, and now he's here. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do, if he can stay injury-free. That's a concern with him too. But, you can't base everything off that. He's still young. and whatnot. But yeah, I'm excited for Zhegrova the most. Openda, I think it's a smarter move than the Colomwani simply on the money. I mean, this is what Juventus is now. It's elk and zebras, so we're no longer going to. We're not trying to build. We're just trying to get guys on good deals and sell people when they're worth stuff. So I've accepted it, and I think he's a smart, shrewd buy. I think a lot of the stuff that Comolli's done has been along those lines. I can't complain. Unlike last year when I was calling June to lay out, I was on fire on X. I couldn't stand that guy from day one. I knew what he was going to do to this damn team. And he made a bunch of stupid moves. I don't necessarily like this team, but I can't complain. There's no stupid moves being done here. So he's negotiated well.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. I think the Zhegrova move is the one that caught my attention as well the most.
For sure. We saw what he did to us in the Champions League last season. He was the one that provided the assist to Jonathan David that opened the scoring in that game. So funny how football works and being on the same team a year later. So it really is interesting. I think the funny thing with Loïs Openda as well, because of course, why can't we have something that's not funny, is that he was the guy that injured Bremer in another Champions League match that tore his ACL. Again, no bad blood between the two. Just one of those observations. Like, of course, a year later, this guy who caused a lot of harm to Juventus fans and basically derailed the whole Juventus season once Bremer was out, is that he is now teammates with him. So just one of those things and how football works. But why don't we get into why we're all gathered today? The Derby d'Italia, Saturday. I couldn't be more excited, to be honest. I think the international break is always a bit disappointing, especially when you're only 2 games into a Serie A season.
I hate it.
Yeah, it's
whatever. I love it. That's my favorite time.
Really?
Yeah. That's I'm Primo Calcio, not Primo Juventus.
I got you. It's just like I don't know. There's something about like what Enrique said when it's 2 weeks into the season, because there's sometimes when you've been playing for a few months, it's like, all right, I'm ready for a little bit of a break. We'll watch the Azzurri, but to get it 2 match days in, I don't know. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's definitely an abrupt stop early on.
Yeah, I think we saw it last season too, where it was like we had a few games in, stop, few games in, stop. And the thing with that too is like, at least for Juventus fans, we were recovering from injuries, so the international break was buying us time to get some players back. But this year is the opposite, where now we had Conceição come back from the Portugal national team. He's injured. He's most likely missing out on the game. One thing was Zhegrova too. He announced today in his press conference that he's unavailable to play on Saturday's derby. So we're a bit thin on the attacking line. We'll see what happens. But Alex, I kind of want you to just talk about how you feel with this Inter team going into the season. I've got pulled up and correct me if I missed anybody, but so far with Inter signings, they got Chivo as the new coach. They got Boni, Luis Enrique, Andy Doif, and Manuel Akanji from City, who surprised me.
Peter Sucic as well, which I think was probably the best of those signings. And yeah, the Akanji one was the most recent one within the last few days or so. Yeah. In terms of like how I feel, very, very, very mixed. Because like on the one hand, I know that some Interisti are like seriously concerned about not even being in top 4 this season. I think that would be really piss poor if this team doesn't at least make top 4 in Serie A, because last season, fellas, as I'm sure you were watching Inter's exploits from afar. They competed for everything, but they won nothing. Like they got so close, to the Champions League right up until the disastrous final. It came down to the final match day for the Scudetto, Coppa Italia semifinals. They had a Supercoppa. Italia lost to Milan. So they were like right there for 4 different trophies, and they came up short in all of those. And so I know a lot of Interisti really just wanted like wholesale complete changes. But like this is still a roster that was that close to winning that many trophies. And I think the spine is pretty strong. There are certain players that are just getting too old, like Acerbi still being so important to the back line. It just seems like that one's at least a year past the expiration date, but here we are. And, with Henrik Mkhitaryan still playing an important role in the midfield, feels like that one is probably a year past the expiration date. But I still have a certain high expectation, with a front line led by Lautaro and Thuram. And I do think that in the attacking, Inter does have better depth this season than they did a year ago. Boni he's a little raw, but he's shown some ability. He scored some good goals in preseason. Pio Esposito, who's I think 19 years old, is super exciting, and he actually looks pretty polished for his age. I think he could definitely add something as one of the backup strikers. So I think that's one area where Inter are probably better off than they were a year ago. But I like the Peter Sucic addition to the midfield. He's played really well since his arrival. But the one area where I do feel like there should have been more changes. I mean, first and foremost, as much as I appreciate Christian Kivu as, a part of Inter's treble squad in 2010, and he's an Interista and all that, I still think the appointment for him as manager, it felt a little desperate. It just doesn't feel like he is really ready for that yet. I obviously wish him the best, but if I were Inter, I would have been more aggressive for someone like Allegri with his experience. And then the second half of that is, even though I wasn't super thrilled with the Kivu appointment, I still feel that when you bring in a new manager, especially for a club that made, massive revenues off of Champions League, especially like Inter did really well on their balance sheet last year, that they really should have done more in the transfer market to be able to accommodate his tactics. Because Kivu is in a position where he's basically forced to, and obviously his nuances are different than Simone Inzaghi, but he's forced to stick with the 3-5-2 when he really wants to play a 3-4-2-1. But because of the personnel that he inherited, because he really didn't get any of the signings that he wanted or targeted. I mean, with Ademola Lookman being one of those, that was a saga that drug on for like 2 months and it didn't amount to anything. So he's basically forced to kind of inherit the formation of his predecessor, which I don't think is completely fair to him. And again, like there are certain parts of the Inter squad that it just feels a little bit stale coming off of last season. And also, I don't really like how they didn't bring in reinforcements for the back line. I mean, we mentioned they bring in Akanji on loan, but then they also they sold Benjamin Pavard. So it wasn't really an addition. It was just sort of a change. And I feel like Inter's back three, there are some liabilities there. I mean, Bastoni has done a really good job at Inter, and Acerbi, as long as you were able to weekend at Bernie's with him and like keep him out there moving some way at his age, is still capable of pocketing opposing forwards. But, at his age, you don't expect him to play consistently. And then, Jan Bisek is another one who gets a lot of playing time in that back three, but he can be a defensive liability. I mean, Bisek is someone that I really like moving forward, and he's able to score goals with his head off of set pieces. But when it actually comes to him defending, it doesn't always work out so well. And he was a big part of why Inter fell 2-1 to Udinese before the break. Some defensive mistakes by Bisek, and also Acerbi was in the wrong position for one of those goals that Udinese scored, the one that they scored from open play. So I feel like they just needed more depth, because this is a team that, again, is going to be competing in 3 competitions. There's going to be expectations in pot 1 of Champions League for them to make another deep run there. There's always an expectation for a deep run in Coppa Italia. So, I mean, I would feel like, if Inter were, playing in one competition the way that Napoli were last year, I would say this is a squad that I'd be pretty comfortable is at least capable of, winning a Scudetto, if not competing late for one. But I just don't think management quite did enough. And I know that it's a common theme in Italian football that I know Juventini have reason to complain about management. Milanisti, all I see them do is complain about management. I guess Napoli fans are pretty happy because, this weird thing, and you guys know it as well as I do, having, Conte as your manager for many years and Conte being at Inter for a couple of years. When Conte is your manager, he is very effective at at getting his president or team ownership to invest, because that's the only way to shut him up. Like, the only way for him to stop bugging you is to buy the players that he wants. And that it wasn't really Simone Inzaghi. I don't think put a whole lot of pressure on management for signings. And then Kivu is just not accomplished enough. Like, he hasn't really, he's had before this season, 10 games as a Serie A manager. So he's not going to be able to tell them who to sign, unfortunately. So, I think Inter has a good team, but I think a lot has to go right for them. And they need certain players, especially on the back line, to stay healthy all season long if they're really going to, and I think they can compete for a Scudetto, but certain things have to break right for that to happen.
So I just want to get your opinion on what is your ceiling for Inter this year, and what is kind of your maybe expectation, and what's worst case scenario that you think?
It's a great question. I think that their ceiling, I think, would be if they really focus on winning one major trophy, because ironically enough, the fact that they went so deep in 3 competitions last year, I think, was the primary reason why they didn't win anything. So, if Inter do have, an early-ish exit from Champions League and Coppa Italia, that might help them, be more consistent in the spring to compete for a Scudetto. So I don't think this is a treble winning team, but I do think, they're not winning Champions League this season, but I think they could make a deep run and earn some revenue. Coppa Italia, we don't care about that one as much. So I feel like the ceiling for them would be, if certain things break right, it's not impossible. I'm not picking them to win the Scudetto. I'm officially picking Napoli, but I do think it's possible for Inter to win a Scudetto as the ceiling this year, if they're able to focus on that competition. My expectation is probably to be, this is my realistic expectation, is to, maybe get to the last 8 of Champions League and finish maybe top 3 and have an okay season. I think the floor would be if Kivu just isn't able to sort of keep the focus from his players. Anytime a team is maybe, if he doesn't eat the panettone, if he gets sacked before Christmas, and then you're, maybe shuffling in multiple managers mid-season, it could get ugly, I think, with the floor. And I think it's a team that, I would say the floor would be something like the domestic campaign that Milan had last year. You finishing 8th or 9th, something like that, because I think what we're going to learn about Christian Kivu in the upcoming months is he really able to keep his players bought in with his tactics and his regimen, because, it's only been a few months since he took over. And so they're still basically, playing Inzaghi ball. And then at a certain point, I think, I don't know how many match days in, 8-9 match days into a season, you kind of lose the hangover from the previous manager, and you really see what the new one is up to. And again, I think Kivu is someone that I really want to root for. I think he does keep things tactically simpler than Inzaghi, which is not always a bad thing, because sometimes with Simone, all the overlapping that his not just his wing backs, but even his center backs coming forward in the box, I think sometimes that left Inter in kind of a lack of a defensive cover. And I think Kivu emphasizes maybe more of a defensive shape, which theoretically could keep you from conceding more goals. And so, maybe it will work, but I think it's fair to question him, given that he has virtually no major managerial experience. So I'm hoping the wheels don't fall off, and that would be the floor.
Do you think, depending on how maybe the first, let's say 10, 15-ish games go, which is half the season, but do you think if Kivu is, let's say, maybe winning 7, drawing 4, and losing the rest, which would be about 4 or less, do you think he's on the chopping block? Do you think the management is looking for other options, or do they stick with him rest of the season, knowing maybe that's how the rest of the season goes with the form? What are your thoughts on that?
It's really tough, because these are uncharted waters for this ownership group, because I obviously in the late days of Moratti with Inter, you kind of got the sense that maybe there wasn't a whole a lot of patience. Like after the like Mourinho days, you kind of understood like you're going to have a pretty short leash for managers if they're not succeeding. So Inter have had like I guess you could call it stability, because they haven't had a manager fired mid-season since spring of 2017, I think, because since 2 seasons of Luciano Spalletti, 2 seasons of Conte, and then I guess it was 4 or 5 from Inzaghi. I lose track after a while. That they haven't had a mid-season sacking in a really long time. So without really knowing, and obviously this is like 3 ownership groups later now with Oaktree in charge. I really don't know how they're going to I mean, you gave like a scenario that's like kind of lukewarm in terms of results. Like I could tell you if the results are disastrous, I would imagine Kivu gets sacked pretty quickly. But if the results are like a little bit better than average and like you're still in the picture for top 4, I would imagine they probably wouldn't make a rash move, because usually when you make an in-season change, you're not necessarily picking from the best crop of replacements. You always have like some of these professional Serie A caretakers who may be sitting around looking for an opportunity. But I don't know. I think in a lukewarm scenario, I think that's uncharted waters. And I would actually, I don't want it to play out that way. But if it did play out that way, I'd be curious to see how they would handle it.
Definitely. All right, let's get into it a bit. So just for some context before we get fully into the Derby d'Italia preview, Juventus and Inter have, in the last 10 matches since January 2021, Juventus have won 4, Inter have won 3, and there have been 3 draws. So pretty even on everything. If Inter wins on Saturday, it's even on the past 11 games. So it's a bit right now. I would say personally, it's up in the air. But Anthony, I want to start with you on your thoughts from everything from this summer with Juventus, the first 2 games, the last meetings with Inter, what Alex just said, what his thoughts on this upcoming season. What are you feeling with this upcoming game?
Well, I think that I predicted a draw on our Primo Calcio cast. So
I think I'm with you on that. By the way,
killer
I'll
there.
elaborate later, but I think I'm with you on the draw.
I think we got we're recovering, licking our wounds from last season. It was a total mess, but we always get up for the Inter game because it means more to us right now. We haven't won anything in a long time. Winning those, big games are mean a lot more to you when you're not bringing in trophies. So I think that we need to start. This is like baby step here to get this game. Inter's been, had one of the more talented teams in Serie A. They've been the class of Serie A, especially in Champions League. So, but now they have a new coach, so maybe they're vulnerable again. I don't know, but I still think that on a talent level, if Barella's clicking, Çalhanoğlu's clicking, Lautaro's clicking, those guys, I think they're better. So, we'll see. Tudor has a very simple game, but as Alex mentioned, Kivu's simplifying things a little bit more too, which might actually be better for them, because I think we got a lot of those goals in that 4-4 thing, because he kept coming at us. And if he just would have just sat back and just turtled up and they would have taken that 4-2 win home. I mean, that was an Inzaghi call on that one. That game was over. Yeah, so thank God for Yildiz, but thank God for Inzaghi's tactics here. So I think, if they get up there again, I think it might be a little tougher to come back. But hopefully Tudor doesn't put us in that position. And so far we've had a better we had 2 clean sheets. We'll see how that goes. But I mean, I'm not super convinced yet of this squad. Bremer being back's been a big bonus from last year, yes. And Yildiz is playing great. He's on target. He's doing what he should be doing. But we'll see how the new guys. I guess we're not even going to see Zhegrova. We're going to just see just Openda, right? And then Chico's out.
Yep.
So let's see if Vlahovic can come off the bench and get a goal to tie it up.
I'm telling you, that's going to happen. Vlahovic always scores against Inter, going back to the Fiorentina days. That's happening.
That's what I'm hoping for. Let's see.
Alex, your thoughts. What are you feeling? I mean, you just perfectly recapped exactly what has been going on at Inter. I like seeing the Inter Twitter and what they have to say. If anything, I like seeing Serie A Twitter and how other teams are feeling. And I think we're all kind of in the same state that we all hate our team, but we all love our team. So Alex, what are you feeling going into this game?
Yeah, and Inter Twitter has been, I think, more, I'm not going to say toxic, but just more negative than usual. It was just a mercato that really disappointed Interisti. So everyone's really salty. I try to keep a smile on my face, so I haven't been on Inter Twitter as much over the last couple of months. But yeah, I mean, my feeling on this match, I know it's boring to pick a draw, so I'm glad Anthony is as well, so I'm not the only one. But I'm feeling that one of these two sides is kind of going to get their heart broken because maybe somebody builds a 1-0 lead and it goes into 80 plus minutes, and then the other team ends up getting a game tying goal 1-1. I mean, most people see. I was even looking at the odds, and like most of the simulations have like, you need to take under 2.5 goals. It's probably going to be a 1-1 draw on this one. So everyone seems to be leaning that way. I think this is you outlined the reasons why this is important for Juventus, to come out and get this win, and they're going to be up for the Inter game. I think this is really important for Inter as well, with most of the core of players being the same from last year, because, I talked about a number of reasons why Inter fell just short of the Scudetto last year. But if you look at the results that Inter had in the big games, like the big games for them, because obviously I know Milan had a bad year last year, but Milan owned Inter last year, which was just very odd. Against Juventus, Inter had a draw and a loss. 2 draws against Napoli. If they'd won either of those 2 games, Inter would have been Scudetto winner. The only like bigger club that Inter performed well against last year was Atalanta, going 2-0. But against everyone else, Inter had net losing records against the Juves and the Milans and the Napolis, and I think they were 1-1 against Roma last year, 1-1 against Lazio. So just didn't perform well in the big games. And so with obviously the core of Lautaro, Barella, Thuram, Hakan, like they obviously remember that from last year, and I hope they're extra motivated. Something I will say that could work in Inter's favor in this match. I know, Ant, you were mentioning it, and I've been reading about Juve having a couple of injury concerns in this one, and of course Cambiaso still suspended from the first. This never happens, but coming out of an international break, they appear to be 100% healthy, which is that never happens. Like the first time I can ever remember, especially the South American players usually always get injured in the international breaks, but everyone seems to be healthy. So Kivu's going to have his full choice. I think even Akanji, who just signed, is going to be available for this one. Maybe we'll see him come off the bench. So that is one area where Inter seems to have a relative advantage, as they look to be the healthier team coming into this one.
Definitely. I think I'm going to differ a bit on my prediction for the game. I think it's going to be one of those where 1 goal and that's it. I will say it could go either way. I have no real thought on who's going to win or not, but to me, this is just one of those, especially it's the 3rd game of the season, and it's the biggest game in all of Italy, happening so soon. Both teams are still figuring out the playing style. For Inter, it's figuring the playing style out with the manager and some of the new players. With Juventus, it's still building off of what Tudor had did with last season and with the Club World Cup. Now we have newer signings in the attack. Usually attacking players have a better time adjusting compared to midfield and the defense. So I think that it's really going to be one of those just coin tosses. It's going to go either way, and we'll probably see it off a corner. It's when the goal is going to happen. But that's my thoughts so far. Anthony, let's go back to you. What team would you like to see Juventus field?
You want me to do my own line?
Let's do it. I think we all know that Di Gregorio is our main guy.
Yeah, I like the Di Gregorio, Gatti, Bremer, obviously. Yeah, Rugani, not anybody but Kelly. Sorry, I like Rugani. He's good. I don't know why we don't play him. And that back line was Allegri's back line from 2 years ago that did really well. So, people can suck it. The right wing back is Mario, right? Super Mario.
It depends though, because if you want Kostic on the left or if you want Kalulu on the right and Joao Mario on the left.
Give me Kostic. We'll bring Kalulu on when Gatti F's up, which will happen, because I'm picking him to start, so he's going to have up. And then look at Turam in the middle. I think that's irreplaceable.
Yep.
They've been and for the attack though, because we don't have Chico. Starting David for sure. Yildiz. I say you do Yildiz behind David and Openda.
So you think you switch it up to 2 up top and Yildiz behind?
I think so. Yeah.
Instead of the 2
you
and
can
the
run.
one.
It doesn't really matter. It's not that I think people typically like Yildiz coming back, making those turning runs. I mean, and even David can come back too. It doesn't really. 3 guys up top doing their business, working with each other. They're all fast, so that's nice for counterattacks. And
and that speed scares me a little bit because again, Inter's back line is not the fleetest of foot.
Yeah, well, the new guy you got, what's his name again?
Akanji.
Yeah, Akanji. Yeah, and yeah. So hopefully his speed. I don't expect.
I will say though, like
turtle up. I want to see us turtle up and hit him with counterattacks. Yeah. That's how I like to play.
See, that would have really worked against Inzaghi. I'm not. We'll see if it works against Kivu. It's so early. I don't even know.
It always works, baby. It's a wonderful strategy.
I think what's funny though too, like Alex mentioned earlier, like he swapped Pavard, who was in his 30s, for Akanji, who's in his 30s. So like you're kind of getting the same guy, different physiques. I think Pavard was a bit more. Yeah, I think Pavard was just a bit more lengthy and all that. But
yeah, and I liked Pavard. I think management just lost faith in. He has trouble like staying fit for a full season, and so I think management. I mean, when he plays, I rate him. So it's too bad he's gone.
Yeah, he's a good player. Who else were you guys linked with?
Oh my gosh! And I can't even remember. The transfer portal seems like such a long journey. There was someone from Padma, defender.
Leone, Liverpool.
Yes, Leone. Yeah, they were linked for Leone for like 2 months. That was the big one. Kivu wanted the Leone thing fell through.
Yeah. I wish it was stayed in Italy. That's for sure.
I think that's been the trend for many years at this point now. The young Italian talent, especially the ones who make the big splash, just get poached to other leagues because it's rare to see young Italians. So
get me started.
I won't. Okay, Alex, I'll go back to you. Besides the attacking threat with the speed that you worry about, is there anything in Anthony's lineup that has you a bit concerned that the Inter might struggle with?
No, I think from the way, I mean, I'm concerned. I'm always concerned about Yildiz. That's someone that I hope Inter doesn't lose, especially if Juventus overall in this one, if they're able to put together good attacks from the right wing, sometimes, or I guess, or from the left wing, because I think Bisek is probably going to be playing on the right. That could be a little bit concerning. Sometimes he's a defensive liability. Other than that, a lot of my, I'm not going to say concerns, I'll just say I do feel if they play their best, a solid draw or even a win are possible. I want to see consistency early this season from Lautaro. Thuram did well. He scored a brace in Inter's opening win against Torino. Sometimes Lautaro has these streaks where he just isn't scoring. So hopefully that doesn't happen early in the year. And, I feel pretty good about Inter's midfield in this one. I think they'll probably have as their midfield trio. Barella, who tends to step up in the bigger games. Çalhanoğlu and Sucic, the new site, which I'm really pleased with. I mean, for as much as I may talk about Inter's transfer window being a little bit lacking, like the one signing that I think looked great since Club World Cup when he started in preseason has been native. He always seems to make the right touch, and he's always putting good through balls together. So maybe a moment of magic from someone like him, or could be you never know with Çalhanoğlu, the moment of magic could be a shot from 20 yards outside the box, because he's good for handful of those per season. So maybe if you can get an extra magic moment from your midfield, that could be
well,
something.
Then let's hear your lineup. And since you've already named some of the names, I imagine Çalhanoğlu is one of those that's just a staple in the midfield. Barella and Lautaro will probably see in there. But yeah, let's hear who you would like to see starting against Juventus on
the
Saturday.
Way Kivu is going to line it up. Jan Sommer in goal. I think the 3-man back line, I'm going to go with a Cherby, Bastoni, and probably Jan Bisek will get the start. Some people think maybe a Kanji starts his first game. I don't think so. I think Bisek will probably get the start. Left wing back Federico Di Marco, right wing back Denzel Dumfries, who also is someone who he's either really, really on or he's really, really off. So we'll find out. I think, as I mentioned, the midfield, I think, is going to be Barella, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, and Peter Sucic, and the 2-man attack to start the game will certainly be Lautaro and Thuram. And then I would imagine if there's a late attacking sub, probably Boni. I want to see more Pio Esposito, but I think with his youth for a game like this, Boni would probably be the first guy off the bench.
Now, Anthony, any of those names that have you a bit worried this weekend?
The attack in the midfield, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Barella's one of my favorite players, period. He's an outstanding player. Çalhanoğlu is always a pain in the ass. Same with Lautaro. Same with Thuram. But that's kind of why I picked the, Gothi's a proper asshole. I want him out there next to Bremer to handle those guys. And he plays well in big games. He really does. Gothi stinks it up against, shitty teams. But he steps up in big games. So I definitely want him out there, even though he hasn't been having a good season. And, I don't think we should even play that game. I think we should stack up and use that speed. That's what I would do. Cherby's an excellent player, but he's really good when they have like a proper 9. And I think with all our little fast guys, that's who I want to go against to Cherby. And even Bastoni, Bastoni, I give him a lot of shit from the national team being a terrible actual defender, but he's good when he plays with Inter on the side.
Yeah, I think he's good in a back 3. Yeah. Like he's one of those guys. He's good when the black stripes are on the jersey, not when it's solid.
That's like the Locatelli thing. He's good with us, but with the national team, he just has been bad. But no, I think that the whole midfield scares me in general. That's a class up for sure.
I kind of want to hear both of you guys. We'll start with Alex first, but my question is, we have 2 coaches, Kivu, who again 10 games with Parma before moving to Inter, and Tudor, who really this is kind of his last chance to make a big name for himself at Juventus. He pulled us by the bootstraps at the end of the season to drag us through top 4. Club World Cup, I mean, we lost to Real Madrid in the knockout stages. I mean, just one of those where you can't really blame him for that. I think a lot of the issues have been that he's just kind of a boring coach. But back to it, who do you think has more to prove in this game?
Ooh, that's Igor Tudor, who just like from the outside looking in, and I remember watching him at Lazio and Udinese. I've always viewed Igor Tudor as more of a journeyman type of manager, and like a caretaker type. So I think the way you framed it, kind of his last chance to really show he can be like an elite manager with a big club. maybe there's more pressure on him for that reason, but it's hard because obviously I look at this with blue and black colored glasses, and I see, someone that we had that conversation about Kivu where everything is up in the air for him, that if he doesn't get off to a good start, he may not, make it to Christmas. And I'm not expecting that to happen. It's just reality, with his lack of experience. But his brief time at Lazio, I think Verona and Udinese, and just I never really felt like, hey, this is a guy who can take a big Italian club to the next level. I just feel like we already know what Igor Tudor's ceiling is. We don't know what Christian Kivu's ceiling is as a manager. So maybe for that reason, it's a great question, but maybe for that reason, I would say Tudor has more pressure.
And really quick, Andy, Italia with Juventus. Yes, he was part of the Maurizio Sarri backroom staff that played, but this is his first time in charge. So I'm going to agree with you on that, Alex, that there's a bit more on Tudor, but Anthony, I want to hear your thoughts.
I totally agree. I think that I totally agree with this assessment of Tudor. I say this a lot on our when my brother and I are making Primo Calcio, but there's a lot of head coaches, and I don't think that Tudor is the exception to that. We have enough of a body of work to judge him on. But that doesn't mean a bad coach can't, give you a decent finish in the league, maybe even sneak a Scudetto once in a while, if all the cards, fall exactly right. But fans have mega expectations, totally delusional, mega expectations for this season. And these are the kind of games you got to win to prove that you are the guy that can take it to the next level. Whereas I think Kivu is still, we don't really know, like us, what his ceiling is. So, I mean, I think if Inter ends up losing this game, it's easy for me to say, but I wouldn't castrate Kivu just yet. Whereas I think a lot of people are going to castrate Tudor, and that's just because they're not completely familiar with his body of work. But no, I mean, I don't care if he's a boring manager or not. I think he's done a good job so far. I just, you got to win these games, man. These are the ones you got to win.
I'll give credit to Tudor that is you need your players to rally behind you, and that's what Mata didn't have, and that's why ultimately he was let go. On top of the shady results and not really and benching players like Thuram and Yildiz in important games, that's what ultimately was Mata's downfall. But Tudor has the players behind him. We also have to get a manager that plays attractive football, and each result has resulted poorly. So I think Tudor, on top of that, he wasn't first choice this summer at the end of the day. We all knew in the news that Conte was the guy to replace him. That didn't happen. Gasperini, that didn't happen. It was too late. It was just names at this point. Marco Silva, Fulham. It was just all these names being thrown around. And basically the management was anybody but Tudor. But for us, it was anybody but Juventus to coach Tudor. And lucky enough that he didn't want to leave after what, at the end of the day, was blatant disrespect from the fans and the coach and the management. But we're lucky that the team has bought into him. But we've all said there is more pressure on him. I think, Alex, you mentioned that Inter hasn't done a mid-season sacking in ages. Juventus have done it recently. If you want to count Allegri as a mid-season sacking with one game left to go, Tudor will have a lot of spotlight on him this season. And it really, I think, for Juventus fans is we don't know what's next for us in terms of coaching. It's right now we're stuck with Tudor, and that can either prove to be good, it could be proven to be bad. We don't know, but I think this is his statement game this weekend, more than it is for Kivu, especially because of the newer coach. But yes, Anthony, go ahead.
It's really hard for coaches. That's why I was so pissed when we didn't go all in for Conte a couple years ago, when we had Conte's my guy. When we jauntily passed him by I knew we were going to get stuck in this third carousel of coaches, because why would a serious coach want to come here when we can't make proper signings? I mean, Inter's been in the Champions League finals 2 out of the last 3. Now they're making an experiment. I don't want to be doing that if I'm, level. Why did we have to do it years ago and when we, threw the dice with Pirlo? That's the kind of crazy shit that we shouldn't be doing. When you're an elite club, well, we're not anymore. We have to earn it. And God bless Tudor. He's done a good job, and I hope he continues to do a good job. I just don't have that much faith in it. But, hey, one game at a time, baby.
Yeah, for sure. I think the one thing that both of our clubs have in common is that in the 2010s era, Juventus did exactly what Inter did recently. 2 Champions League in 3 years. Both losses. Granted, Juventus will have that we never lost 5-0, but that's a whole different thing. But Inter had this period of dominance, not the dominance that Juventus had, but the dominant team in Serie A and Champions League, 2 Champions League in the past 3 years. And now we're both starting this season kind of on a clean slate for the first time in a while. That, yes, Napoli won the Scudetto, AC Milan won the Scudetto, but when AC Milan won the Scudetto, it's not like they were, oh my gosh, this is the team. They won it during the COVID season. Napoli, when they won it, that was a one-season thing where they were one of those best teams.
Yeah,
but
the first time, they were incredible that year.
For sure. But last season, they won it on the last day. So they were a good team. They weren't playing in any major competitions except the Italian competitions. So I think this is the first time in a while that Juventus and Inter are coming off together on a clean slate. Yes, we hate each other dearly because that's what the derby is all about. But we're both coming at the season new, fresh, with both teams needing to prove something. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I can get from both, from what you said, Alex, from me and Anthony have been chatting for a few episodes now. But just, I kind of want to get your last thoughts. Alex, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I always, this is a matchup. I mean, especially this one, there's something about the Derby d'Italia that I get those extra butterflies. Even when I'm watching this game in my living room, I'll probably be watching with my 7-year-old son who gets if things aren't going well, he gets very upset and emotional. I'm just like pacing across the room. It's always that sort of matchup for me. I've even in like recent years, there's been, for both sides, agony and ecstasy. Like one of the biggest daggers I can remember in a Derby d'Italia was 2018 when Inter were down a man and had like a 2-1 lead, and then Gonzalo Higuain doesn't stop scoring late and gets a late winner at the death to break my heart. And then when Inter had been on like a really poor run of form for several matchups, going over a couple of years against Juventus, and I think it was Conte's second season at Inter, when Inter finally had like a breakthrough and a 2-0 win with Arturo Vidal, he did nothing at Inter for a season except he scored a goal against Juventus, which his former club. It was like the only thing he did for Inter that entire year. And Inter won that one 2-0 after it just so that was the ecstasy. There's been plenty of agony for me in this fixture. So this is just a really, really significant game. And I would love to see, obviously, from my point of view, Inter to pull it out, to kind of take the bad taste out of my mouth from the Udinese game before the international break. But for all the reasons we've outlined, this is an important matchup for both of these clubs. And third match day of the season, that's way earlier than we usually get this fixture. So we're 0-60 right after the international break. Here we go.
Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm from Detroit, so I grew up with some good rivalries here. We got Michigan, Ohio State. So we got
you're a Wolverine, I would assume,
absolutely,
not a Buckeye.
Absolutely. Yeah, I miss Harbaugh. And then Detroit, Colorado, and this matchup here is right up there with those. But like you said, I'm young on my screen. I don't know if in recent years I've cared as much as I had, in the day. I remember my favorite one was when we first got back from Calciopoli, that good Chiellini Ibrahimovic matchup. You guys might be too young for that. I'm not sure. Definitely Enrique is.
Yeah, I'm old. Unfortunately, I'm old enough.
Yeah, that was a fun matchup. That was real intense. There was definitely a lot of bad blood back then. I don't think there's as much anymore, especially after Conte kind of came there and gave him the little, touch of
Well,
grace.
and now you've got Turams on both sides. You're gonna have Lily and Turam at the game in neutral colors, so you got brothers on both sides.
Yeah. Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers got to punch each other in the face. We'll see what happens. But my theme for Juventus this whole season, and we were talking about it on prior casts, Enrique's, I want to see them do the little things right. I want to see them play positionally sound. I don't care how boring it is. I love me some boring calcio. I want to see them play positionally sound. Yeah, dude, who cares? Just win, baby. I want to see them fight
at the end of the day, we're Italian calcio fans. Like, we grew up on Catenaccio, so this is what we know.
I love Catenaccio. I'm proud of Catenaccio. It won us 4 World Cups.
Yeah.
I don't care what the kids say. Play some defense, bust your ass, get to those loose balls, fight hard. Whatever happens at that point, I'll be happy. I want to see that as a standard for this team week in and week out. And that's every game. Every week I'm going to say that. I'm going to hammer it home.
And that's at the end of the day, that's all we can ask for. Alex, I'm with you on that. I'm very excited. I think because after 2 weeks of traveling in Europe, I finally get to sit down and watch it on a TV instead of having to travel with my phone. And man, that's what I'm excited about, to finally be able to watch a game and go back to it. But Alex, I really appreciate you joining us on this episode. It's been so awesome having you and hearing a whole new perspective on Inter and Juventus. Hopefully we can all get together after the game and rehash what we'll see. Again, we've all stated our predictions, but it's been a great pleasure having you, and we look forward to talking again at some point. But that's been this episode of Forza Juventus. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. And until next time, after the Derby d'Italia, see ya.